She was fairly green-eyed over the knowledge that no matter how nice her clothes, she always seemed to look like a sausage that had been packed too tightly into its skin, while her friends wore their Old Navy duds like runway models. Today, however, it didn't matter, because last night Cade Gallari had kissed her, touched her, had made love to her, and since the moment she'd opened her eyes this morning, she'd felt almost skinny, wholly desirable, and, yes, beautiful. Not that her first foray into sex had been completely wonderful. If the truth be told, the foreplay had been awesome, but the actual penetration part, well, that had been uncomfortable, and over so fast, she'd never actually gotten the chance to cross the finish line. But hey, it had been her first time, so it wasn't as if she'd expected angels to sing or anything. Still, Cade had made her feel special. Between kisses, he'd told her how gorgeous her lips were, how pretty her hair, how soft her skin, how awesome her breasts. And afterward, he'd held her as if she were more precious than platinum. Which didn't prevent her from being blown away that she'd done it with him. She sure never would have predicted that. Up until 6 weeks ago, in fact, she'd have sworn it wasn't even a remote possibility, since she couldn't remember a time when Cade hadn't been a giant pain in her butt. They'd known each other since birth, practically, yet at the same time hadn't truly known each other at all. But the little she had known of him, she hadn't liked. He was part of the crowd that reveled in ridiculing anyone who didn't fit their standards, which, face it, was 9/10 of the student body. So when she and Cade had been assigned partners in Mr. Burton's year-end senior science project, she'd seen Titanic stamped all over it. Because, come on, her and Gallari, on a project that accounted for a quarter of their grades? When the two of them were 8, he'd pulled her hair and trod all over her toes in cotillion class. In the 10th grade, the guy had looked up her skirt from beneath the bleachers, for God's sake, then told everyone she wore pink panties. Before last night, in fact, her blood had congealed at the thought of him seeing her fat thighs and probably laughing about them with those asshole buddies of his. Yet over the past month and a half, she'd seen another side of Cade, a sweet, funny, thoughtful side she hadn't dreamt existed. And sitting across from each other in the library or at the coffee shop tables they'd taken to staking out to work on their project, an insidious attraction had begun to grow. Soon they were sitting in the dark in his car, just talking, reluctant to call it a day. Until one night he'd kissed her. And once that frontier had been crossed, there was no going back. Every time he'd kissed her these past couple of weeks, every time his hands had grown bolder, charting new territory, she'd just melted, finding it really difficult to call a halt as, little by little, he'd pushed the envelope on their intimacy level. Until last night, she just couldn't make herself say they had to stop. Her lips curled up in a secret smile. "Okay, that's it." Stopping in front of the cafeteria doors, Poppy grabbed Ava's arm. "What is up with you?" She laughed, tried to keep the news to herself, then ultimately caved because they were a sisterhood and she told them everything. "I did it, Poppy. I thought for sure I was going to graduate, if not die, a virgin. But last night Heat crawling up her chest, she suddenly turned shy at the idea of saying the words aloud. Jane's mouth dropped open. "Oh my God," she said slowly. "You did the deed?" She nodded. Poppy looked perplexed. "With who?" Then her eyes narrowed. "Oh, crap. Please tell me it wasn't Buttface Gallari." "Don't call him that." Okay, so she was the one who had given him the title way back when, but still. "Just don't, okay?" she said in a softer tone and shook her head. "Look, I want to tell you guys everything, and I will, after school when the potential to be overheard isn't so high." "Yeah, all right," Poppy agreed. "But the minute we're clear of this place, I've got some questions for you, sister." Turning Ava loose, she pushed open the lunchroom door, and they walked into the chaos and bedlam of second lunch. Trays and crockery clattered, voices reverberated off walls, and students seemed in constant motion as they either moved between the